I bought some books. Hello, my name's Tommy. Thank you for clicking on this video. This is Moonstone Makes. Today is a lovely, gorgeous, sunny, cold Monday in February here on the Northern California coast where I'm coming to you from. It's the beginning of February, and throughout January, I apparently bought a big stack of books. So, let's talk about them. Okay, where do I start? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 physical books. One book that is still on its way to me, and I also purchased a couple of audiobooks, which I'll probably cover as well. Okay, I think we're gonna start with the first one I bought in this series. So this I actually bought at the end of December, and you may have seen it in my vlog. I did like half of Vlogmas in December, and I purchased this book during that month. And I have read it already. It is Anna Karenina. This is the Oxford University Press edition. It's a hardback, cloth bound. It's very pretty. And it's got a quote on the back, which, is this quote even in the book? I don't know. I don't remember. It says, "Love, it means too much to me, far more than you can understand." So Anna Karenina is a classic by Leo Tolstoy, originally written in Russian in the late 1800s? Yes, the late 1800s. It's a classic social commentary, romance tome on love. It's poetic, it's beautiful, it's an intertwining, winding family epic story. And I already read it. There are many ways you could describe or categorize this book. What I will say about it is that it follows the lives and relationships and family of 3 women, 2 of whom are sisters, one of whom is their sister-in-law, one of whom is Anna Karenina, and their lives, their families, their partners and children, and the people they love and the people who love them, and all of the messiness and drama that goes along with that, with political commentary sprinkled throughout the whole thing. It's based in the Russian aristocracy of the time. It's romantic, it's pretty, it's full of fancy dresses and chignons, which was something I had to look up. It's a hairstyle involving, I think, lots of braids. I read it already, I loved it, and there's book number 1. This is White Noise by Don DeLillo. I don't know if I'm saying that right. This is a novel written in the 1980s. I think it won some prizes back when it was written. This is the 25th anniversary edition. And Noah Baumbach recently released a movie based on this book. I watched the movie and I fell in love with it really hard. So the next day I went and I bought the book, and then I read it immediately. So I've also already read this one. I actually bought this book off of a textbook website because this is a text that people use in college courses, I guess. And it came with a couple of notes from the previous student who owned this book to me, assuming that I was going to be a student who had to read this book in a university course. And I'll just give you a little peek. There's this sticky note here and then a note up here. And then there's also a very short note at the very end of the book, like after the last sentence on the last page, they wrote a note too. The sticky note I think is really funny and kind of cute. It says, "This is the easiest book yet. If you're this far, you've got it!" Exclamation point, smiley face. So encouraging. So this is like another kind of social commentary of the time. It's postmodern, it's weird and strange. The dialogue is also weird and strange and very direct. It's about a family living in the 1980s who lives in a small university town. The father is a university professor who specializes in Hitler studies. He has a wife, and between them they have like 4 kids or something like that. There are things that happen to this family that you're following along with them through, including a toxic airborne event which occurs very close to their town. Their town is evacuated and they have to go spend time in like an abandoned Boy Scout camp with the rest of the citizens of their town. And it's kind of apocalyptic feeling for a little while. And then there's also lots of stuff in here about capitalism and consumerism. There's shopping at the mall in a very like kind of surreal, like almost like 80s, 90s TV show kind of way. There's experimental prescription drug use going on in this family, which is its own little avenue it goes on. There are themes of, along with capitalism and consumerism, this like vast, deep-seated fear of death in this family, in the members of this family, but also a commentary on like us as people in general. There is a lot of metaphor in this book, and there are a lot of weird, almost surreal things that happen to the characters in this book, to this family, and to the people they know. And so much of it is commentary on other things, on American life, on human nature, and stuff like that. It's really good, but the movie is like so much better. So I loved the movie. The movie took this book and very directly adapted the characters and the dialogue to the screen in a way that was very faithful to the book. There are some major plot differences between the movie and this book, and I don't know, I just think what Noah Baumbach did with this book, what he did with these characters and the plot, was so good. He brought this story to life in a way that the book, he gave it a spark that the book didn't have. And that's not always the case with film adaptations from books, but I feel like it's the case with this one. This book is really good, but it also feels a little flat. Maybe that's just because I read it after watching the movie, which just feels so sparkly or something. But anyway, I loved the movie. I liked the book. White Noise. Don DeLillo. Next is another book that I've already read. This is Bunny by Mona Awad. I loved this book. This isn't supposed to be like a review video or anything, but I guess it just kind of is because I've already read so many of these books. So this book, as has been said by other people, is kind of a cross between the movie Heathers, A Secret History by Donna Tartt, also like The Craft, the movie, and there are elements of like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein in here. It's kind of like a gothic, macabre sort of story. Our protagonist, Samantha, is a scholarship student to an Ivy League college. She's in the creative writing program along with 4 other women in her cohort. She's like tall and brooding, and she like wears all black. The other women in her cohort are 4 women who are very close. They're in a very tight-knit group or clique. They call each other Bunny. They're very over-the-top, like super feminine, but also feminist, also very pretentious, literary types. They act very weird as a group. It's kind of described as like they move through life like as like a group of kittens kind of fawning over each other and falling over each other, and they're constantly calling each other Bunny and telling each other how much they love them, and they're very close and huggy, and they act very like cartoon-like in that way. And Samantha is the outsider who is forced to be with this group because they're all in the same cohort. This book ends up following what happens when the protagonist gets invited to join this group of bunnies. There are themes in this book of outsiderness, of pretentiousness in, like, I don't know, the literary world or the academic world. There are elements of horror in this book, kind of like campy elements of like gore and blood and guts and stuff here and there. It's very funny and it's kind of twisted, and I really, really enjoyed this book. Okay, now we're moving into the realm of Greek mythology. I got 3 new Greek mythology retellings, and this one is Electra by Jennifer Saint. You may have seen in my last vlog, I went to the used bookstore and bought this, and I've already read it. This is a feminist retelling from the perspective of 3 women surrounding the Trojan War. Electra is one of them. She is Agamemnon's daughter. Agamemnon was like the general or the leader or whatever of the Greeks in the Trojan War. I'm not a Trojan War buff. But anyway, the other woman that this book is about is Clytemnestra, who's Agamemnon's wife and Electra's mother. And then the 3rd woman was a Trojan woman who was Cassandra, who was a I don't know the name of it, a seer. She could like see prophecy. She was a prophet. Is that what she got? She had prophecy. She could see the future. But she was cursed by Apollo, who gave her the gift of prophecy, where no one would ever believe her or heed her warnings or even remember that she said it was going to happen after it did happen. So it's pretty much about three cursed women. Cassandra's cursed by Apollo for refusing his sexual advances, and Electra and Clytemnestra are members of the cursed family of Atreus. So this is all just like Greek myth stuff. If you're into Greek mythology, this is one of the ones that is out right now, and it's good. I loved it. Not as much as Ariadne, but I liked it. I picked up a Natalie Haynes book called Pandora's Jar. This isn't a novelization of a retelling. This is just the story of several different women in Greek mythology and their stories from a feminist telling. I have only read one of the chapters in here, and it's the Medusa chapter, and I'll talk about why with the next book. And it seems to be pretty, like, almost academically written. Like, it's not like the Stephen Fry books about Greek mythology and Troy and the heroes. It's not just straight out like, these are the stories. It's, these are the stories about these people, and here are a bunch of sources and different types of readings of these sources and what they could mean. So I really like it so far. It is a little bit dry. She is like, Natalie Haynes is like funny or something. I read on the back of the book that she's also a stand-up comic, and I think she tries to incorporate a lot of humor into her books. I don't know exactly. And I definitely came across a little bit of that in the Medusa chapter. To me, it didn't make it any less dry. Maybe it's not my kind of sense of humor, I don't know. But I think this one is going to be fun to read and just pick up here and there when I want to read about different people in Greek mythology and ancient Greece, because I love that stuff. So in here we've got Pandora, Jocasta, Helen, Medusa, the Amazons, Clytemnestra, Eurydice, Phaedra, Medea, and Penelope. And I read that Medusa chapter to prepare myself to read this book, which I'm super excited about. This is Stone Blind, also by Natalie Haynes. And this is another Greek myth feminist retelling about Medusa. I freaking love Medusa. Very briefly, Medusa's story is that she is the mortal sister of two Gorgons. She's the daughter of two sea gods, and she was born with wings, and she was raised by her two sisters, the Gorgons, on a remote coastline of North Africa. She was very beautiful, and she was raped repeatedly by the sea god Poseidon in Athena's temple. Now, Athena was really upset about the defilement of her temple, so she punished Medusa by turning her hair into snakes and giving her the curse of turning people to stone if she looks at them. And then after that happened, she's considered by the world to be a horrible monster. So Perseus, the hero, comes along and beheads her and uses her decapitated head as a weapon. And that's the story of Medusa. It's terrible and it's tragic, and it's very telling of how women get treated. So this is Natalie Haynes' version of her whole story, and I am so excited about it. It's a very new book. I think it gets released in the US this month, February. I bought like the UK version because it was already out, and I just really, really wanted to read it. And so far it's great. I love it. I'm this far in, and at the point where I'm at, she has just met Poseidon, so tensions are high. Medusa is one of my favorites. I obviously, with how much I read feminist Greek retellings, I love the women in Greek mythology, and I love hearing their stories through a more feminist lens. But not only women, I also love monsters. I love the monsters of Greek myth, and I love when they're given a voice and given a perspective other than they're monsters, so they need to get killed. I love it when they're given intrinsic value by authors, and whether because they have their own story and their own lives and awarenesses and perception, or they're kind of part of nature and the wilderness, like they're wild animals sometimes, and they deserve to be around just because of that. Anyway, I love monsters, and I'm excited about the treatment that this monster is going to get by Natalie Haynes. So anyway, here's the next book. We're out of Greek mythology now, and we're into manga. I bought one manga, and I've been wanting to read this for so long, and I finally picked up the first volume. This is The Girl from the Other Side. And it says Story and Art by Nagabe, and I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. I'm also not sure if that's a single person or like a company. I don't really know. But this series of manga, I think there's 11 or possibly 12 volumes of this. It's what is described as a quiet fairy tale, and I'm like super in love with it. I already read the first volume, and it's just so sweet and gorgeous and mundane, but also being really magical. And it's all black and white. The art style is really pretty, and it's about a place where there are outsiders and there are insiders. The insiders live in a walled kingdom to keep the outsiders out. The outsiders are monsters, and we follow the story of an outsider, who is this guy, and a little girl that he cares for, who is an insider stuck on the outside. They have a very kind of like parental child loving relationship. He found her as an abandoned child in the forest and took her in, and that's kind of all the backstory that I know right now. And they just like live in an abandoned house, and they bake pies and make flower crowns and gather things in the forest, and it's just freaking really lovely. I mean, there's also some tension in it because there is the element of the insiders and the protectors of the kingdom trying to rid the outside of all of the monsters who are outsiders. Anyway, it's lovely, and it's mundane, and it's very sweet, and I love it. She's kind of, the little girl's kind of like precocious, and the monster guy or whatever is very sincere and kind of dry, but also very loving, and it's just, it's like, it's right in my alley. It's so perfect. I love it. Okay, now I guess less than half of the books that I got are books that I haven't read yet, so this could have just been like a reading recap. But anyway, this is My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Otessa Moshfegh. This is kind of a sensational book. Like, people love it or they hate it. And I am excited to see which camp I fall into. I have kind of recently been bitten by the bug of the like unhinged woman kind of genre or character or whatever, and this fits nicely into that category. So this is about a well-to-do young woman who has all of the opportunities and privileges and advantages afforded to her that she could possibly want, but she still finds herself to be extremely depressed. And she decides she wants to kind of go into hibernation for a year to just kind of bypass all of her feelings. So she finds a doctor who will prescribe her the medications that she wants to pretty much slumber her way through the next year and through her hardships or something. I've known about this book for a long time, and at first when I heard that synopsis, I wasn't interested, but the more that I get into the type of book that I think this is gonna be, the more I'm interested in it. And like I said, a lot of people have read this book, and a lot of people love it, and a lot of people really hate it. So I don't know where I'm gonna fall, but I'm excited to find out. I'm kind of excited about this author. I also got her newest book, Lapvona, which is a very different kind of story. And I don't know. I think after reading Bunny, after reading Mona Awad, and also after reading Melissa Broder, one of her books, which I'll talk about in a little bit, I'm just kind of into this. I want more of this unhinged woman character who like can't really toe the line between reality and whatever isn't reality. I don't know. I'm just like super into it right now. So I thought I would give this book a try and we'll see what I think of it. If you've read this or any other Otessa Moshfegh, I would love to hear your opinion. So that goes into our next book, which is La Bona. So this is Otessa Moshfegh's most recent book. And this is kind of a historical, kind of dark, gross fantasy or something. It's a medieval story about a town where a bunch of dark and depraved and terrible things happen. And that is pretty much all I know about it. So I don't know what to tell you beyond that, but another book of hers that I've heard people really love and I've also heard people really hate. But I think it's supposed to be like really good, even though it's pretty disgusting. I think there are a lot of trigger warnings that go along with this book. So I don't know. We're going to see. We're going to see how I feel. I bought 2 of this woman's books without ever having read her stuff before. So obviously I have high hopes, but I don't know. This is Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke by Eric LaRocca. This is a collection of 3 vignettes, 2 longer stories, 1 very short story, and they are all really macabre and twisted. And there are elements of some of them that are really grotesque and gross, and I didn't like reading. But it's pretty much, it's horror. The first story is about 2 women who meet on the internet in a chat room under the pretense of selling an antique apple peeler. And they develop this unhealthy relationship. And it's from the point of view of like a journalist who is presenting you with police records, and you the reader are reading it in the form of like the back and forth emails and text room chats. Text room chats? Chat rooms. I'm a child of the 90s. I know about chat rooms. And yeah, that one spirals into some dark stuff. The next story is, it takes place in a near future where it's been proven that there is no like life after death. And it's from the point of view of a very religious family. That one's weird and dark. There's suicide in it, like really gross suicide. There's ghosts in it. There's like, I don't know, angels or maybe a demon. I don't know. That one's really weird, and it goes really dark into like religious trauma, and yeah. It also takes place on an island during the winter season of a hotel and its caretakers, so it's got kind of like a Shining kind of vibe. The third story is this whole like thing where it's all about bets, and there's 2 people and they're taking bets, and they're just going farther and farther with how far they will go with how bad their bets are. And yeah, I don't know. These stories are weird and they're dark, and they're really good and well told. I think they were just a little far past my own comfort level with horror. But they're all about human connection and our desire to have that connection with other people or with spirituality, and kind of the dark places that they can take us because we're so desperate for them. So yeah, if you're into really weird stuff, you might want to pick this one up. I don't know. I could have done without reading that one, I think. This is I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman. And this is a novel about 39 women who live in an underground prison. They don't know how they got there. They don't have much of a memory of their lives before being imprisoned. And I think it's going to follow their relationships with each other, and they're trying to get out. So I don't know much about this one, but some booktubers that I really liked this book. And I think it's literary and it's feminist, and we'll see. We'll see. But it sounded cool. So. The Seas by Samantha Hunt. This is supposed to be like a fairy tale-esque, kind of creepy, kind of weird, but also very poetic book. And from what I know about it, it's a girl living in a small coastal town in the US, and the town itself is, you know, supposed to be pretty toxic and full of like abuse and alcoholism and stuff like that. And the girl in the book thinks she's a mermaid because she was, I think, raised being told she was a mermaid. And she's also in love with an Iraq war veteran who is older than her. That's pretty much all I know about it. But you give me mermaids and fairy tale-esque together and I'm like, yeah, sure. And a lot of people really loved this book. It's a very beautiful book too. It's like this little hardback that's like just got this great texture, and the illustration on the front and on the back, I bought it used, is just really pretty. And I'm excited to read this one. Okay, almost done. This is Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. This is an author that I've read 2 books of over this last year, and I loved them so much that I just wanted to keep reading them. So the next one that I got was this one. And I think this is one of his very beloved books, and I don't know much about it except that I think it's... No, I don't. I could just be making this up. But here's what I think it's about. I think someone dies and their, like, butler, maybe, is traveling across the country with their stuff. I don't know. I don't want to know. I don't really want to know. I feel like his books are best being kind of blind when you go into them, and I feel like what I know about it already, even though it may be wrong, is like too much for me. So I don't know much about it, but it's Kazuo Ishiguro, and it's my 3rd of his books, and I'm super excited because I've just enjoyed his other 2 books so much. I read Never Let Me Go and Clara and the Sun, both of which are like kind of speculative fiction-y, kind of dystopian, but they're also very like small stories within these bigger worlds, and they're usually very sad and very sweet, and I've just loved his writing, so I'm excited about this one. This is Elsewhere by Alexis Shakin. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but this is a novel about, I think this is another like kind of speculative fiction, maybe dystopian. It takes place in a small town in the mountains where traditions are very closely held to this community. And something about daughters and mothers and grandmothers and that role in society, and mothers going missing, like into the mist or something. I don't know exactly what this is about, but I think it's speculative fiction, and I think it is kind of maternal, which I'm all about. So we'll see. We'll see about that one. Okay, this is long. The last one I'm going to talk about is 2, actually. Melissa Broder. She's an author that I recently got into, and I love her. I got the Pisces on audiobook, and that is about a woman who has some issues that she's trying to work through with love and addiction and sex and treating herself well and treating others well. And she drops her life, moves to California, meets a mermaid, and falls in love with him. It's one of these unhinged girly kind of books, and I super loved it, like to pieces, 2 bits and pieces. I loved it. It's very raw and it's very real. Melissa Broder writes, she writes about the body, about just like having a body, existing in a body in a very like straightforward, real, and gross kind of way. Gross when it calls for being gross, because sometimes having a body is gross, and she just like puts it all out there. And it's just wonderful. I just loved it so much. She loves a merman. So I loved that book so much that I bought Milk Fed, which was her next novel, and that's the one. I think it's going to be arriving today, and I'm very excited to read that one. I don't know much about that one, except that I think it's about 2 women, one of which has issues with food, and I think she kind of falls in love with the other one who I think loves food herself. And then I think there's some weird, like, I don't know, but I'm sure it's going to be strange, and I'm sure it's going to be bizarre and dark and weird and twisted and maybe dark. And I don't know I think I'm going to love it. I loved the Pisces. So that's everything. Those are all the books that I bought within like this past month and a half. And I would love to know if you've been acquiring any new books, or if you have read or have been wanting to read any of these books that I've showed you today. Please let me know in the comments down below. Based on what I've showed you today, if you have any recommendations for me for books that you've loved and thought I might like to, let me know. Also, I would love to hear. Yeah, okay. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here with me. I appreciate it so much. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. And I will see you next time in either another book video or a knitting video or a vlog, because those are like my things these days. Okay. Have a beautiful day. I love you. Goodbye.